yeah, Jason, tell us about yourself and how you
Yeah,
what your points of achievement that you believe you would like to show off about magic.
yeah. So hi, I'm Jason. I'm here to do a coaching session today. I'm a professional Magic player to some extent. I have uh, I top aided two PTs last year. I won the Wilds of Eldraine limited 100K. Yeah. Uh, but yeah, we were starting with like looking at this draft and specifically start. I like looking at like the end result deck to start. And I think one of the big problems here is again your lack of mana fixing and just your mana base in general. The like I was saying, the rule of thumb I like to use is you really want at the very least 8 sources of your main color, right? So like if you count here, right, like you have a lot of blue spells, especially your Sib-Sig Appraisers, which are pretty important to cast on turn 3, right? So you certainly want 8 blue sources, but you only have 7 blue sources here, 6 islands and 1 Dragonstorm Globe that can make blue mana. And the Dragonstorm Globe can't let you cast Appraiser on turn 3 even, right? Because like you would have to cast Globe on turn 3 and then you can't cast your Appraiser. Like similarly for all your other colors, right? Even counting the Globe, it's 7, 7, 6, and none of those hit 8 sources. So none of them are consistent enough at casting your like spells that you need to cast on turn 3, especially your like double pipped spells, right? Does that make sense?
Also, I take notes while I do this, so if I start just blanking off, I
Mhm.
promise you I'm just typing.
Yep.
Okay. And then you said that because I understand that like a good amount of card draw can sort of sometimes help you fix. Um,
Mhm.
but you had a caveat to that. What was it?
Yeah, so like you do have some card draw, like Roiling Dragonstorm, Glacial Dragon Hunt, the Appraisers, the like Island Dragon, Storm Streak Feral, the omens of those two, right? But the thing is, like, card draw won't help you that much with smoothing if you can't cast it in the first place, right? This is why I was like, oh, it's pretty important to cast your Sib-Sig Appraiser on turn 3, right? Because your deck naturally has some like awkwardnesses and like it helps smooth those awkwardnesses, right? But if you don't consistently have blue mana on turn 3, your Sib-Sig Appraisers aren't going to help with your smoothing that much anyways, because like if you can't cast them, then they can't help, right? So like for example, one thing I might want to do with like rebuilding this deck at the end here, or at least rebuilding the mana base, would be I would definitely want to be just playing 8 islands, just to like at the very least 8 islands, just to make sure that you can like actually cast your like Sipsig Appraisers and Roiling Dragonstorm on time. Um, and like you can shave a little on other sources. Like for example, here you have 6 white cards, right? And none of your white spells represent any like card flow. None of your white spells are helping you hit your other colors, whereas your red and blue spells in both colors you have like some cards that will help you, dig towards your other sources. So white is definitely your least important color here, and playing 3 planes is probably not quite enough white sources, but you have enough ways of like discarding things or selecting through things that I'd rather have 8 islands and 3 planes rather than 6 islands and 5 planes, if that makes sense, right?
Okay. Um, yeah, I think that makes sense. I What about like Riverwheel Sweep and Jeskai Shrinekeeper? Um, I guess I shouldn't rely on them for card draw, but that's sort of what I thought them as well.
Yeah, so the thing is, Riverwheel Sweep, um, you can cast without white mana, right? Like theoretically, you can just cast that for 4 mana.
Hmm.
So like while it's very nice to have all 3 colors, that is one of your less demanding cards in terms of colored sources because you just need any 2 of your colors really, and it costs 4 mana, which is not great, but it's not absolutely terrible. It's not. It's at least castable, right? And your Jeskai Shrine Keeper that does draw cards, but like it also costs 5 mana. It's like later in the game, so you don't need as many sources to get to it. And also, like, once you're spending 5 mana on something like that, that's like when you're thinking of card flow and cards and like smoothing to hit your like the correct colors, you generally want to think about like cheaper things, right? Because if you have to wait until casting one of your like 5 mana spells, like Focus the Mind, right? Like I don't think Focus the Mind is that good at hitting your hitting like colors that you want to cast early, right? Like if you cast Focus the Mind to try to find your red and white sources, then you're not going to be able to cast Quarry Mountain Stalwart on turn 3, right?
Repeat that one more time.
Similarly, like if you're trying to rely on Focus the Mind to hit your red and white sources, you're not going to be able to cast Quarry Mountain Stalwart on turn 3, right? Because you can't cast Focus the Mind before turn 3. So it's going to be like if you're trying to rely on like expensive card draw to fix your colors, well, that means the colors that you're trying to fix for won't be available until much later in the game, and that can be like that can be pretty costly, right?
Yeah. Okay. Um. All right, got it. Thank you. I did later on remove them. So, uh, maybe you can give me some insight on that next, if there is any here. Um,
Yeah. So, do you want to go into the draft now?
yes. You feel free to like direct me when we should go to something. I just have it on. I'm just streaming it on my side because it's just like logistically,
Yeah.
technically, technologically wise, it's easier.
Yeah. So, I guess just one question to you to like put things into context. Like when you're drafting, like what are you thinking about, right? Like after, like for example, this first pack, right? Like pretty obviously you should take the Corey Seal Cutter. It's a very strong card. Like after you take that card, like is there anything that you're thinking about like how that shapes the direction of your draft? Well, what like what's on your mind, I guess.
When I'm drafting, I don't ever really marry the first pick nor the color actually. Um,
Hmm.
Especially when it's like not something like Corey Steel Cutter,
Hmm.
which actually I think also lends to other problems as well, where like I don't have enough playables later.
Hmm.
Even though I am very open in a good position, I think I've noticed a pattern in which like halfway through pack two, I start seeing cards in both of the different archetypes that I'm sort of staying open to, and then it just fucks me. I have to find a draft that does that. This might be one of them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe this is one of them because I think one thing I want to go over with this draft is I think it would benefit you if you like drafted with a little bit more direction, right? And this doesn't mean you have to like completely marry your first pick, as you're saying, right? Like you don't need to pick Corey Steele and go, okay, great, I'm like always playing red and specifically always playing a red deck that can like double spell very easily, right? Like you don't need to do that, but I think there's a lot of picks in this draft that like show that you don't really that you aren't really having like any sense of that like you're not really having any sense of direction, and it's certainly functioning to your detriment. So the next couple picks are fine, I think. Pick pack one, pick you take a Sib Sig Appraiser, which you could argue about like that versus Sonic Streaker as which of those you should take. I think it's really up to preference, up to like whether you want something that's a little more committal into Marju, or whether you want something that like leaves you more open. Like they're somewhat comparable cards. And then the next pick after that, you take a Sun Pearl Kieran, which is also pretty reasonable. It's probably the strongest card in the pack. Um, Caustic Exhale is good, but goes less well with your colors. Uh, I think Okay, let's see. Pick 4 is also fine, but I do want to point out one thing in this 4th pick, which is so you take Channel Dragonfire here, right? And this is a decent card. It is not amazing, but it has uses. But one thing that we were looking at the deck at the end that you ended up with, and one of the problems there was that you didn't have enough fixing, right? Like you were playing 3 colors and your mana base was very bad. One thing I would point out here is that you have this dual land available in the pack. And it's kind of early. You don't exactly know whether you're going to be in both red and white. But at the same time, I don't think Channeled Dragonfire is a strong enough card that I would take it over a dual land at this point. I think it's somewhat close. I think the card certainly has merits, but uh, taking a dual land represents a lot of equity because you just get to play more of your cards. If that makes sense.
Okay, you said channel channel Dragonfire is not strong enough at this point to pick over dual land. Are you trying to imply then that there might be a point where it is?
Well, so dual lands, the thing is that the value of these cards of both of these cards changes quite a bit through the draft, right? Like Channel Dragonfire is not a strong enough removal spell to count as that much removal, right? Because 2 damage doesn't kill very many things in this format, right? Or at least there's a lot of creatures that you want to kill that are larger than 2 damage can kill. So it's certainly nice. It can pick off small things, but I'm pretty sure I saw in your games there were a lot of spots where it was awkward because it could only pick off small things, right? It can
Yeah.
still be a nice card. You can also go face with it, which can be nice, especially with Corey Steel Cutter. But when you it doesn't necessarily fill a hole in your deck, is what I'm saying, right? Like I when I draft, I tend to think of picking cards as trying to fill various holes in the deck that I'm drafting, right? Uh I'm trying to construct a deck that can that has the tools to handle many different problems, right? And Channel Dragonfire is a card that only handles a small subset of problems that aren't that important, even though it might be nice rate overall, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Meanwhile, something like Windscarred Crag, fixing is something that all decks will need some amount of, right? Um, And right now, it's pretty reasonable to think that you might be in these 2 colors, right? Later in the draft, maybe you find out that you're actually in Teamer and don't care about the white, and then Windscarred Crag would go down in value. Or maybe later in the draft, you might find out that you're in Jeskai, and then Windscarred Crag will get much higher in value because you know that you're going to be in Jeskai, right? Like dual lands like this, the early on they are kind of in the middle of how valuable they are because you don't know for sure whether or not you're going to play them, but still it's pretty valuable to pick them up because they do enable you to splash, and they're just so valuable to have if you're actually going to play them, you know. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, just in general, I think it's good to pay a little more attention to fixing in forms like this. Yeah. The next pick is definitely the first one that is I think uh, categorically just wrong. Or at least just putting it maybe a little harshly, but the previous pick, I think you could certainly make a good argument for taking Channel Dragonfire. That might just be card evaluation difference. But I think here, um, are how much have you played with the Devoted Duelist card? Are you just a fan of it, or I'm just curious what your thought process was for taking this pick?
Mm, I was thinking that I will want to double spell more
Mhm.
often, anyways, because of this. And maybe while I'm at it, I just get some of the advantage from the pinging as well. And it's a two drop.
Yeah, I mean that certainly is reasonable, but I think this is a case of you focusing a little too much on like the words on the card. So I guess this is something where like there's kind of two ways you can evaluate cards. One might say by words or by numbers. Um, Words mean what this means is if you're looking at a card and evaluating it by its words, then you're looking at the various synergies, right? Like for example, the devoted duelist here, right? Like it has the word flurry on it, right? It like you might think like, oh, okay, this is going to be strong when I'm double spelling a lot, because if you focus a lot on specifically that text, right? Or you could evaluate it based on its numbers, specifically its power and toughness, right? Like it's a 2 mana 2/1 with haste. That's not a very good stat line, especially in this set. And all card evaluation definitely needs some balance of both of these ways of looking at a card, right? Like no card is just its synergies or just its raw stats and rate, right? Um, but overall, I think this devoted duelist card is one that really gets dragged down by its numbers quite a bit. Like just a 2 mana 2/1 haste really doesn't cut it in this format. Um, and like even if you're consistently triggering the double spell, that doesn't make it like does not make it a strong enough aggressive card. There are just too many ways to punish you for playing a 2/1, and it just gets invalidated too quickly. Does that make
Um,
sense?
and how do you feel? Like, I know it's a completely different deck, but would you still say the case it is for like Boros?
Yeah, I think that like first of all, I'm not making a claim about this card like based on your deck, right? Like your deck could be Boros for all we know. Like you have a Sig Appraiser, but like
Got it.
there's no guarantee that you're going to be in blue. Um, but this card just like it as a 2 drop, it might be fine, but it's very much filler, right? Like it's not like again, it's not a card that is really solving any of your uh, is not really solving any of your problems, right? It's not giving you like a lot of power. It's not that powerful of a card. It's not going to like be removal to deal with one of your opponent's threats. It's not going to represent like fixing to help you cast your spells, or like card draw to like to help you keep up in the late game. It maybe is a little bit aggressive, but it's not aggressive enough that it actually like starts fixing problems. And this is like maybe a little abstract and a little like uh dependent on just evaluation of the card, but just in my experience, this card is not one that is that is particularly impressive.
Hmm. Okay. I guess my evaluation of it is like skewed, as I do see it played often enough that I'm like,
Mhm.
well, it can't be that terrible, right? Because I do see it often. It does do work when there's like a couple or three of them. Um, and if you're really aggressive, it kind of the 2/1. If it comes out in your starting hand, it's great, right? Um,
So, I guess let me try to find okay. Um, let me try to give an example, right? You said like if it's in your opening hand, it's great. Can you go to this spot? This is one of your games. Um, I put a link in Discord. I think if you click it, it should just take you there. It's just a link to like a spot in one of your games.
ah,
Mm. Yeah, so here this is a so you did multi-six with this hand, but this is a spot in one of your games where you did have this devoted duelist early, right? Like you played it literally on turn 2 and then attacked for 2 with it. But the problem is your opponent then immediately plays a 2/3, right, on turn 3. and you no longer have any attacks, right? And that's one of the problems with this card in this format is that there's just a lot of creatures with like 3 or more toughness, especially like even 3 drops, right? Like like this set has more creatures with 3 or more toughness than most sets, honestly. Like there might be other sets where there's more like 3 2s for 3 instead of 2 3s for 3. But this set just like has an abnormally large amount of 2 3s for 3. Or like other stats that make a 2 1 very awkward in terms of how it lines up. So like there's just going to be a lot of spots like this one where you play your 2 1 on turn 2 and it gets in once, but then your opponent just like plays something that can block it and you can't even attack, right? Like it would be fine if you could just trade your 2 drop for their 3 drop, right? If the card they played was a 3 2, that would be fine. You get in for 2 still. But like the fact that you can't do that here, and like you're not even really double spelling because you like want to cast your Sibsig Appraiser, like you're not going to be able to double spell literally every turn with this card unless you have a very specific deck. And even when you do, like doing 1 damage a turn isn't that great, and like it gets walled off really easily. And that's generally like what I find is the problem with the card. Where yeah, it there are spots where it can do stuff, right? Like maybe your opponent doesn't play something that can block it profitably, but there's just many spots where it also like has fail cases like this.
Okay. Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yes. All right. So Devoted Duel is very bad pick.
Yeah. Well, I think well, if you go back to the previous pick again, I think we got a little sidetracked on specifically Devoted Duelist being a mediocre card, but I think another piece of this is there are other cards here that I like actively like a lot more than Devoted Duelist as well that you're giving up a lot by not taking, right? Specifically, there's the Teamer Monument. All of the monuments are like very valuable because they both help prevent you from flooding and also like serve as mana fixing. Um, so like basically all of the monuments are like fairly high picks for me. And you might argue, oh, you're looking to get into Jeskai because of Sun Pearl Kieran or because Jeskai is nominally more of a flurry color triplet, right? But I mean, you only have one white card, so it's pretty reasonable that you might end up getting into Teamer, right? And then Teamer Monument becomes very, very strong. You could also take Effortless Master, though I'm not particularly high on that card. It's a little better when you're already in red blue and have double spelling things. I think it's a little better than the Duelist, though I'm not super happy with it either. But I would also be pretty happy to take this Embermouth Sentinel. I think it might be my second pick out of this pack, just because again I want to stress like fixing is very, very, very important in this set when you're trying to play 3-color decks. And like, yes, like it might be a little contradictory. It might sound a little contradictory for me to recommend taking a 2-mana 2/1 after I told you that Devoted Duelist is not good because it's a 2-mana 2/1. But the difference is that like Devoted Duelist, the bulk of what it's used for is its body, whereas Embermouth Sentinel, its main effect is fixing you, and it just comes with a body. Right? And specifically, I just value fixing that much.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess moving on. Uh I think the next interesting spot is pack 1 pick 8. So I don't disagree with this pick. In fact, I very much agree with this pick, right? Teamer Battlecry is a very strong card. But one thing I want to focus on is that at this point, at this point, when you're taking a strong teamer card like this, you need to like focus in a little on like what that means for your direction, right? Like this late teamer battle crier is a signal, right? It is a signal that like teamer might be a little bit open in your seat, right? That like it's it's a very strong teamer card. Now that you're able to pick it and put in your deck, you also now have a strong reason to go into specifically teamer, right? So that should register in your head and say like and make you think like, okay, now maybe teamer is like a direction I should explore, right? Again, you don't have to be married to it, right? You don't have to like abandon all hopes of drafting white or anything, but it's something that you should definitely like think about and then definitely like register. And I think some of the problems you ran into this draft was you took this battle crier, but then you didn't really capitalize on it because after that you kept taking white cards when they weren't all that good or necessary. And we'll see more examples of that as we keep going through the draft. But I wanted to like mark this spot as like a point of interest for that reason. Um, so I guess in terms, someone in the chat is asking what you think of the 4/3 Menacer. I think I assume that's the effortless master. I think it's not amazing, but mostly because of its colors, and if you're already in those colors, like I guess you can take it. Um, I it certainly is a creature that you can cast.
Okay. Uh, next pick, or you want me to skip to something else?
Um, yeah. So I think the next one is pack on pick 10. Um, because like Stormstreak Feral here is like a pretty reasonable pick. There's not much else in the pack. So this is an example of what I was saying of like your so you just took this teamer battle crier, right? That's telling you, hey, teamer is open. People around you don't want to draft teamer. You have the strong teamer rare now. You are already in blue and red. You don't have that many white cards. So I guess my question for you is like, why are you taking the Bearer of Glory here? Like, what's going on in your mind when you're like making this pick between this white card versus the other two red cards? Do you just like rate this Bearer of Glory much higher than the other two red cards?
Uh, yeah, I think the other two red cards aren't usually like very good to begin with. Um, so Bear of Glory is good in any white deck, like Boros or do I think picked it.
Okay, well, it's interesting to hear you say that like you haven't found the other two red cards are that good because I actually like the other two red cards quite a bit. Um, and like I've been avoiding like using like 17 lands game in hand win rate that much up until now because like it's I don't think fully relying on like the 17 land stats is like that useful of a strategy. Um but like if you just like mouse over them on 17 lands, you can see that their stats are like actually fairly close where like Bear of Glory and Artisan are both like 54.4, 54.6, like basically the same, and
I
then like
wouldn't know. I don't
Iridescent
look
Tiger is
at
like
it.
1% higher.
I don't actually look at 17 lands like they don't much.
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but it can give you a general sense of like if cards are fairly close, it's like pretty hard to like come to any conclusions. If they're like really far apart though, like you can certainly like if a card has like very high stats didn't that you didn't think was good, it's more likely that you're wrong than the stats are.
Say that
Because like
again.
usually if a card has high stats, like it generally means something. If a card has low stats, it could be that someone that people generally are bad at using it, but uh, uh also like what I would say about 17 lands data is it's not perfect, but it is somewhat useful. Um, and like I think this is like I think in this case I would agree with its evaluation that like the three of these cards are fairly similar in power level. And like Bear of Glory is like a nice strong 2-drop, but the thing is you again, you have this Teamer battle cry, right? Like you don't need to be you don't need to be taking a strong white 2-drop. Um
So you said that, just repeating to make sure I understand, that I have the battle crier. It is a strong card. So even though they're about in the same stats, the Bear Gloria Artisan, I should still pick the Artisan, for example, because of that strong card.
yeah, so yeah, that's basically what I'm saying here. If like it's like if you're taking this Bearer of Glory here, right? It's very, very, very hard to imagine a deck where you're playing both Bearer of Glory and Teamer Battlecrier, right? Um, you could theoretically do it, but you wouldn't naturally want to do that, right? Like that would suggest that you're splashing Battlecrier, which isn't a great place to be, right? That would suggest that because it would suggest that you want to play this Bear of Glory as a 2-drop, so you would want to have a bunch of white mana, and that makes it like fairly unreasonable to cast a Teamer card. And this isn't to say that there's no value in taking the Bear of Glory. Again, like you aren't completely married to playing this Teamer Battlecrier, but the thing is, when you take the Bear of Glory, you're basically saying I can only play one of these or the Battlecrier, right? You're not increasing like the maximum strength of your deck very much, right? Like that's one way you can think about it, where like you can imagine like every time you take like a powerful card that will make your deck at the end of the draft, you're like increasing the maximum strength of your deck by some amount, right? But if you're taking a card that like directly competes with another card, you're not really increasing that maximum strength of your deck. And that's not always like fully important, but it is a way to like see the cost of like taking something like Bear of Glory here, where I think taking Meticulous Artisan or Iridescent Tiger is like a similar amount of power, but like synergizes with the Tumu Battle Crier in some sense rather than clashing with it, right? And that synergize might be the wrong word. Like it works with the Battle Crier instead of like directly working against it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think the next pick is uh fairly similar, honestly. Well, not that similar. Like I think a Royal Procession mostly just like isn't that good of a card. But it's mostly similar in that it has the same 2 red cards that you declined to take. But yeah,
Um, so sorry, still on this pick. Um,
yeah.
Another reason why, like, it's, you make a really good point, and now I know this. But I also, this other thing that I think about, I want to see your opinion on this, is that I found to build my decks around like one card or two, they usually turn out to be kind of like bad decks, because then if I don't draw those good cards, then the rest of the deck is like pretty bad. And so that's something I also avoid doing in general, which is why I wasn't really picking, not this is, but in general, I don't pick things that necessarily capitalize on one good card because of that.
Okay, so what I'm saying is not that you have this Teamer Battle Crier, therefore you need to build around it, right? So like um let me put it this way, right? Like one very abstract way you can think of like drafting, right? This is very simplified, very abstract, just as a warning. It's not like it's very unnuanced in a way that that definitely has some flaws. But like one framework you can think of is okay. Imagine every card like you assign it like some number that it represents its strength, right? From like 1 to 10 or whatever, right? Like maybe like Teamer Battle Crier is I don't know, an 8.5, and like Bearer of Glory might be like a 7, or probably a little lower than that if Teamer Battle Cry is an 8 point. I don't know. These are arbitrary numbers, right? Uh, and like maybe then you could say like, oh, okay, well, the strength of your deck at the end maybe is like the sum of all of these numbers, right? Obviously, this is very simplified, very abstract. Cards, in fact, like, have context, right? Like a deck of only Teamer Battle Criers would not be a very good deck. Right. That would have some problems. You want like some mix of like, curve, removal, things like that. But like this is one way you can think of things, right? And the problem with taking Bearer of Glory here is that you're never really playing this Bearer of Glory in the same deck as this Teamer Battle Crier. It's not about making your Teamer Battle Crier better. It's about the fact that, like, when I take this Bearer of Glory, basically what I'm saying is, okay, I currently have this 8.5 in my deck. Now I have the option of either having this like Bearer of Glory, which is a 7 in my deck, or this Teamer Battle Crier, which is an 8.5 in my deck, right? And like both of them have different contexts that might make one better or worse, right? Like maybe white ends up being open, so it's nice that you have this Bearer of Glory that goes with your white cards now instead of a Teamer Battle Crier that doesn't. Or maybe green is open and you don't get this Bearer of Glory. But the thing is, like, you know that you're almost always playing red. There are very, very few cases, like based on the picks that you have so far, that you would not play red. So taking a red card is just safer. You're locking in, like, okay, I'm going to get this, maybe 6.5 or maybe 7. I don't. The exact number doesn't matter, right? Yeah, I'm going to get this card for my deck and lock it in here, and like it doesn't matter, it's much more likely to make my deck because this Bearer of Glory might not, because it's competing with this battle crier. It's not about making the battle crier better. It's about like the fact that the Bearer of Glory just is less likely to make your deck.
Okay, give me 1 second, okay? Okay, so we're like on ad break anyway, so this is like good. Um, yeah, so this is why like one draft is good enough because I will ask a bunch of questions and ask it to explain really like um
Yeah.
but there's gonna be like 2 to 3 minutes of ad break, so I'm just gonna like grab myself a smoothie and you can like grab yourself water if you want to or something. Or you
Okay, sounds good.
yeah.
Yeah, I will BRB then and get some water.
I got a jar of dirt, I got a jar of dirt, and guess what's inside it?
Um, Slogurk.
Oh, that was one of my the decks I made in standard.
Oh, okay.
It seems
Also,
tough. Roll very much like it.
Jamoki, I really don't think that's what they were saying. Like, that's oversimplifying it. Also, they were using that as an example to sort of like explain the abstract idea of what goes good and what, how, and why, right? Not like, and how, why I would put it in instead. About being more open and stuff like that. Not necessarily that, like, oh, this is good and white and this is good. It's also about like the conflict of it against another card, right? Also, I never thought of using the word abstract for that type of thinking, but oh my god, Jason, that's exactly what I need people to explain to me things that, like, for some reason, reasoning in the way that, like, people usually do it doesn't work for me. And I think abstract is the way that I need people to, like, teach me about magic.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next pick.
I'm glad it's helpful. Yeah, next pick is funny because it's against the next two same cards. I mean, Auroral Procession at least is like green. Mostly this is I just don't really like Auroral Procession as a card. I still would take one of the other two red cards. But I mean, you could even like still apply the same concept that I was talking about with the previous pick here, right? Because again, Auroral Procession is just a card that is less likely to make your deck, right? Because again, you're going to be in red, but you don't actually know for sure that you're going to be in green. And it's just important to like keep in mind for every card. It's not just about how strong the card is. It's about like both how strong it is and how likely it is to make your deck, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I need to write that down too.
Yeah. Okay, so so I think the end of this pack is fairly uninteresting. Just like taking the, there's not very many cards left. But so I'm curious. When you're in between packs, right? At the end of the pack, sometimes there's some time to like look at your picks, and like think about stuff. Do you have any process for like thinking about like what direction your deck is going, or like what you need to pick up in the next couple packs to like fill out your deck?
I wait until like pick one of pack two to essentially like give me the direction that I want to go in. Since I tend to stay fairly open in pack one. And I would usually look for something really strong in like the rares and whatnot, but that wasn't really happening. So I thought of like, well, this is just generally a good card, right? I already have another one. More of them would be better. And so I picked it because this was like, well, I don't know. I don't really think of this as a Jeskai card a lot of the time, actually. I think of it more as a Boros card as well. So I didn't pick it because of that, because I was like, well, if I'm gonna go into Boros, there needs to be like a very hyper specific thing that I need for me to like go into Boros. Yeah, so that's
Yeah, so I think and this is like getting towards another topic, but one I think is like pretty important to talk about. The one way that I like to think about like the path that you take in the draft is that pack one is a lot about like finding pack one in the beginning of pack two often is a lot about finding direction, right? Like finding powerful cards, hopefully powerful cards that you can play all in the same deck, finding some direction to give yourself to like shape like know which colors you're going for, maybe what kinds of synergies, things like that, right? So you're largely looking at trying to pick just pure powerful cards, just like thinking about like how powerful cards are on their own or like just on rate, rather than like thinking about specifically what kinds of cards you're taking, right? But a lot of times, like in the back half of Pack 2 and going into Pack 3, I think one thing that is very important to consider, and I think a lot of people don't do a particularly good job of, is figuring out what what weaknesses your deck has and how to fill those weaknesses, right? Like how to address those things. Um, and I think this would be a good time to like briefly go back and look at your final deck, where I would say that one of the weaknesses you ended up with in your final deck, like one of the holes that your deck had that like it just didn't have a way to deal with various things, was that it was missing removal, right? Like you had some amount of removal, right? You had Glacial Dragon Hunt, Channel Dragonfire, and River Wheeled Sweep. But first of all, that's not very much removal, right? Only 3. You could argue 5, like a couple of the removal spells have Harmonize, so you can like reuse them. But you only have 3 cards that really remove any of your opponent's creatures in any respect. I guess technically the Island Dragon can tap down a creature, but only for 1 turn. And also, all 3 of these removal spells are fairly like conditional, and uh, they're removal spells that aren't like hard removal, right? Like 2 damage, 3 damage is not going to kill very many things, right? Like there were a lot of spots in games where you had to like play Dragonfire and then also harmonize it to kill 1 4 toughness creature, or like play Dragon Hunt and harmonize it,
Yeah.
or like River Wheel Sweep something and like keep it tapped down for a few turns, but it would eventually become a problem again, right? And you were very, very bad at dealing with just like a large creature or like 2 large creatures. Then things started really getting ugly, right? So certainly one of this deck's weaknesses was removal, and like to some extent you could have fixed that by playing a different set of cards. Like in your sideboard you have Dispelling Exhale, which can help a little. Obviously it's not going to remove anything that's resolved already, but it is going to give you a little more ways to deal with like just a big creature that your opponent casts. If you just have the Exhale, you can counter it. Doesn't always work though. You also have Riverwalk technique, which like helps a little bit by like making them spend mana on it again at the very least. But again, not a perfect solution. And I think one big takeaway from this draft is that like you just like I do think that one of this deck's big weaknesses was lack of removal, and I think you needed to focus a little more on that during the draft, right? And this is why I wanted to talk about like in packs 2 and 3, often you need to think about what your deck needs, right? And not just like taking the in a vacuum best card out of every pack. You need to take what the best card is for your deck out of every pack, and that can be a very, very complicated question. So like in this pack 2 pick 1, that isn't necessarily like Sipsig Appraiser is a completely fine pick. If you want to go back there, like that's not really what I'm talking about. But I think the first one of the best examples of this is like going towards the back of the pack. And we're maybe jumping around a little bit here, but like if we look at pack 2 pick 6, if you want to jump there, right? Like you took this Jeskai Shrinekeeper, which yeah, sure, this is certainly a very powerful card, but but it's not necessarily what your deck needs. Your deck has already card draw with the Sipsig Appraisers. You can already have some you already have some dragons and service threats. Obviously, they're like lower quality threats than Jeskai Shrinekeeper, but the thing that you really need out of this pack, I think, is this Narset's Rebuke. You really need something that can just like remove a big thing, and that's not something you have right now. You're not okay. Sometimes your deck can be aggressive enough to solve that problem for you, right? Sometimes like pure aggression can serve as player removal, which forgoes the need of creature removal. But that very much isn't the case here. So like I think that this pick, even though it might look a little weird, like I would have taken the Narset's Rebuke over the Shrine Keeper. That partially also again because of the whole you might not play the color white thing, but even still, like I think even if you like knew that you were going to be in Jeskai, I think Narset's Rebuke is more important in this spot. Does that make sense? And other things like I mean, to be fair, a bunch of the like there were a couple of Riverwalk techniques that I was interested in, but you did end up getting to anyways, and that was somewhat of a deck building issue more than a drafting issue of like not playing any Riverwalk techniques or any of the dispelling exhales. But another thing that we can talk about in terms of like what spots where you took something that was more rawly powerful, but ignoring what something that was more important for your deck is fixing. Where we went over how your deck really lacked fixing, and that was one of the big issues with it, right? So something like pack 2 pick 5, right? You could if you want to go to you could take this Rugged Highlands over this Sultai Devotee, right? Like the Sultai Devotee doesn't really fix you very much. It only like gives you blue mana if you have access to green mana, right? Whereas like the Rugged Highlands is a little better in terms of mana fixing. If you're going to be playing green, which you still have this Temur Battlecryer, you have the Sagu Wildling, it's very likely that you might, right? Similarly, like pack 2 pick 7, Quarry Mountain Stalwart is an alright card, but the thing is you already don't have enough fixing to cast your 3 colors of spells. Taking the Quarry Mountain Stalwart like is not going to help that issue, right? Yeah, you will still have this issue of not being able to cast your spells, and what you actually need to take is this Tranquil Cove. Even if like you might think that Stalwart, it's like a somewhat powerful card in the right context. Like you have a bunch of Simsync Appraisers, you get like probably double spell pretty often, but still like you need to be you need to like figure out what your deck needs, and in this case, what your deck needs is not more power but more fixing, right?
Okay.
Or like the pack 2 pick 9 Temur Monument as well. There were just a bunch of spots in this pack 2 where there like you could have taken fixing or removal, and instead you took like something that was probably a somewhat powerful card, just not what you needed. Right?
Okay. On tangent. I know this is wrong, but I'm just wondering how wrong I am. When you pick cards like this, like the Tiger or Rebuke, and they give you like other colors for casting it, like how much fixing do you think of it has?
So that's an interesting question. I think the way you should think about it is like, okay, what is the so first of all, it depends. What is the spell you're trying to cast, right? For example, if the spell you're trying to cast, okay, here's a very extreme example, right?
Okay.
Let's say that the spell you're trying to cast, with something like a Tiger, right? Let's say you're trying to fix for blue to cast your counter spell. That's obviously not going to work.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's a very, very extreme example. A less extreme example might be, okay, I have a bunch of blue 2-drops, right? Or some white 2-drops. That's still not going to be great for fixing, right? Like, especially if it's a 2-drop that you want to cast early. So one of the important things about these spells like Tiger or Rebuke is that they don't fix early, right? There's like various spells that you cast. You need to think about like in terms of you need to think about when you want to cast them, right? Some spells you really want to cast them early. Some spells like you naturally will cast them later, or like are okay with casting them later, right? So like removal spells are a classic kind of spell that you might want to have fixing for, that are naturally cast later in the game, and you're very fine casting them later. those you're probably going to be more okay like using Tiger or Rebuke to fix for. Like for example, the white O-ring. That's a card that is like perfectly. It works perfectly with Narset's Rebuke, right? Like, it's fine for you to cast it late, and you use the like 3 mana you get from Rebuke fully to cast the O-ring. That's great.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
It like really depends on that, right? And another thing, of course, is you need to, if you're relying on casting a spell to cast a different spell, you need to be able to cast the first spell. So you need to have enough red sources first before. But something that costs 4 in a red probably will be fairly easy to cast. But you can't be splashing red as well.
Got it. Okay, cool. Next point of interest.
Yeah. So I think overall, like most of the points in Pack 2 are just what I was talking about of like, not realizing what your deck needs and specifically. There was also a bit more of that like confusion of whether you're a white or green, like you took a Saga Wildling, but then like a Flamehold Grappler, and those are both understandable, but then you took another green card and another white card, and like at some point you do need to choose.
Yeah.
Right? At some point you do kind of need to make a choice there.
Look, I picked the land. Are you proud of me?
But yeah. Going into Pack 3 though, I think like taking this Windcrag Siege is a decent like point of like choosing that you're going to be white and not green. Even still, like again, I would point out like okay, there's a Narset's Rebuke, there's a Tranquil Cove. Like Windcrag Siege is a very powerful card, so like I do think at this point it's a little close, but I do think that like those are cards that you really need to consider in that spot. Pack 3, pick 2. There's another devoted duelist you take over another piece of fixing. I'm sure you already know my stance on that at this point. Yeah.
What would you have? What would you have picked though? Like probably land.
I would take the land.
Okay.
Like Dragonstorm is very powerful, but I think you just really, really need the land at this point. The land is just way too important. Like when you're in this point of the draft where you're like fully 3 color, like you have many white cards, you're pretty fully 3 colors. I am like I said, right? In back half of Pack 2 and Pack 3, one of the main things I'm generally focusing on is what does my deck need, right? And in this case, that I like feel like my deck is screaming at me that it needs 2 things: fixing and removal. So I will like be very, very, very selective with what I pick over like fixing or like actual hard removal, right? Like to the point that I might have even taken Rebuke or Cove over Windcrag Siege Pack 1 pick 1, but that's a fairly interesting conversation because Siege is just one of the strongest cards in the set, I think. Or like generally stronger than every uncommon in a vacuum. But yeah. So yeah, the Exhale is fine. Like honestly, I might even think about taking Artisan as some pseudo fixing because it makes a treasure, but Exhale also is pseudo removal, so a little bit of balance out on those 2 respects.
So you know how I was talking about things like the Tiger or Rebuke and using them as fixing? You said it depends a lot on like what spell you're trying to fix for and stuff like that. This would apply the same with like Artisan.
Yeah,
Okay.
because again, this is like something that you can't use the treasure for fixing until probably turn 5, right? And so like it's going to be hard at casting your and also it's only a one-time use, so it's not going to be great fixing for casting many different white spells. But like if it's just casting a Jeskai Shrinekeeper, that's fine, right? Another thing in the next pick, Pack 3, pick 4, which is a very small thing, is so Frontline Rush as a card. So first of all, out of this pack, right? There's not very many like red or blue cards. The red and blue are your main colors, definitely at this point. There's not very many red or blue cards that are appealing. The most appealing one is probably your third Dispelling Exhale. Third Riverwalk technique is pretty mediocre, certainly, and the third Dispelling Exhale also has some problems because those get a little worse than multiples. But there are some appealing white cards. But what I'll say about Frontline Rush is, even though it is maybe the most powerful white card in this pack in a vacuum, it, when you're in this spot where you need more fixing, right? You just like don't have enough fixing. It's especially dangerous to take even more cheap cards on your splash color,
Yeah.
right? Because again, when when you don't have that much fixing, your white is on a splash, and it'll just be harder to have that white mana early, and so Frontline Rush will just get worse because you're almost never casting this on turn 2, right? I would rather take something like Arashan Sunshield, which might double as a little bit of removal. It's not amazing. You could also think about taking Brushmaster just as like a more powerful late game card than Sunshield. Or you could just take the Exhale. I think all three of those are reasonable. I just don't really like the Rush. And then next, yeah, obviously Globe, like Slam Dunk. I really, really, really need fixing, and I think it's a little more important than the Rebuke, especially when you have like 3 dragons for it to go with. But taking Focus the Mind over Evolving Wilds is definitely not what you want to do here. Like, you have some amount of card flow again. Just focusing on what you need. Just repeating that over and over. The next pick, Simsing Appraiser over Rebuke. Don't do that either. You can see how there were a lot of places where you could have fixed some of the problems you had in this draft, right? And this is a skill that is admittedly fairly hard. Like knowing what your deck needs exactly, knowing like at what points you need to like make concessions to overall power in order to like better build a well-balanced deck. It's a very hard skill, but it's one that's also very important. And there just are often like points in the draft where you can pick up what you need. And it's important to recognize when those points are. Yeah.
Any
yeah,
other points of interest?
Yeah, the Agent of Codis. I mean, it's more of the same thing, right? Agent of Codis versus Narset's Rebuke in Pick 9. Yeah. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but yeah. That's a lot of what I think went wrong with this draft was just like the 2 big things, fixing and removal, knowing that you needed to address both of those concerns, and also a little bit of like confusion around when you picked Team or Battle Crier of like I think you went a little too much into green, or like at the point where you were taking specifically the Devotee. It wasn't a huge deal, but just wanted to note that a little bit.
So, I feel like I also needed 2 drops. Which is in part why I picked the Agent of Codis instead of like an expensive removal spell. But if we're honest, I need both. Right? How would I be able to say like which one I need? Because if I don't have enough 2 drops, I just die sooner, and then vice versa.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, again, that's one of the very, very hard questions to answer in draft, right? Like specifically, how much do you prioritize your various needs in the deck? And what I would say is that at this point, you have 2 Devoted Duelists, you have 2 Humbling Elders, I think, or no, you only have 1. The second one came afterwards. You have a couple things which aren't like don't affect the board immediately on turn 2, but are still things to do on turn 2, right? Like Channel Dragonfire, I think you could honestly somewhat count that as a 2 drop, or like a defensive 2 drop is that, and like both Dragonfire and Dragon Hunt, because one of the only things those cards do is remove your opponent's cheap early creatures. They don't do as well in the late game, and they're cheap, so like you might as well play them on turn 2. So it's okay. I would say that your 2-drop situation is definitely fine at this point because you have those duelists. If you need a 2-drop, right? They're not amazing, but they're fine. And you have a couple cheap removal spells, and you have 2 dispelling exhales. Like all of those give you something to just something to do on turn 2, and so you aren't completely starving for 2-drops. And the other thing I would say is like if Agent of Codus was like an actual premium 2-drop, right? Something that is both very good early and very good late. Um, like I don't know if there's that many great examples of that in this set. But if it were like basically if it just were a stronger card, I'd be more excited about it. And also if you had any hard removal, I'd like feel the need for Narset's Rebuke less. But the thing is like you really just don't have any ways of killing a 4 or greater toughness creature right now in your deck. So it's very important to have some way of doing that.
Cool. Any other points of interest during the picks?
Not really, no.
All right, so then we can move on to playing.
Yeah.
The details.
So you go to details and then you click on the replay, like 7 turn. Yeah, that thing. Yes. I think this first match there wasn't too much in terms of like gameplay points that I thought you made like a bad choice or anything like that. I think mostly it was your cards got a little bit outclassed and your opponent just like had some creatures that you couldn't remove, right? Like so I think this game is like a good demonstration of some of the weaknesses of your deck, right? First of all, you mulligan your opening hand because of mana, right? You have mountains and islands, like in the first game, you had mountains and islands and no, and 2 white cards, right? Um, and your second hand, you do keep, which I agree with, but like it's a little awkward because again, you don't know that you're gonna have white mana. So, a demonstration of your deck, of your deck's mana being a little questionable, and then like the rest of this game is a demonstration of like you had no way to remove your opponent's poised practitioner or Zergo, right? Like you just didn't have any ways to get those off the battlefield, and your like 2/1s got a little bit outclassed because of that. You just didn't have a way to um, keep up.
Oh yeah, and this is where it got like sort of fucked because I never got like a second white source that would let me double spell.
Yeah,
At least like
that's the other thing, right?
efficiently.
Like you even hit your first white source. That was like maybe a little that like helped this hand develop a little, but you even needed your second here because you really wanted to go like grappler sweep. Um, yeah,
So next game.
yes. Uh, the next one is definitely a lot more interesting. It was a very close game. Um, I think you mostly played it pretty well. Again, I think so yeah, if you mouse through, let me try to find an interesting spot. Oh yeah, you suffered a little because your opponent played Warden of the Grove on turn 3, and then you didn't have any removal spells for it ever. Again, another theme of the draft. Um, but overall, like you were able to race them with your Quarry Mountain Stalwart, which was nice. I think there was one part though. Oh yeah, I think that on turn 4, I kind of wanted to just use this channel Dragonfire to deal 2 to their face, which is a little bit aggressive, certainly.
Wait, what? Why?
Or sorry, it's the turn you play Quarry Mountain Stalwart.
Oh.
Yeah, your turn 4. Which is here. Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of want because like basically it represents dealing them 4 and gaining 2, right? Like, so at this point, like,
Got
knowing
it.
what you know about your deck, right? There's like no way for you to get these large creatures off the battlefield. The
Mhm.
only way you're winning this game is by racing.
Okay.
Right, and the way you do that is with your stalwart dealing 2 damage to their face over and over again, and maybe your Stormshriek Feral hitting them in the air, right? And because you're racing, I don't think that this Channel Dragonfire is going to have that much use, right? Like, it's going to be very hard for you to, like, there's just not that many 2 toughness creatures, and I think it's very, very valuable to just, at this point, gain 2 life and deal them 4, right?
Mhm.
And not using it here, you're just fully missing out on a Quarry Mountain Stalwart trigger. And this is certainly, it's certainly a little weird of a play to make because it's still fairly early. It's like a little weird to like use this Child Dragonfire in this way, but like the way that the game is going and the way that your deck is constructed, there's just no way that you're getting out of this game in any way except by racing them. So I would like to start that race early.
Okay, so this sort of takes like then I have to also understand what my deck is able to do and not.
Yeah, yeah. Like a big part of this is understanding that uh, you don't have infinite time here, and you really need to end the game.
Mm.
Yeah. Like I really like sweeping here. And then oh yeah, you get the cutter off of that, which is nice. Uh,
It's attacking, okay. Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
definitely.
okay.
Like you're not blocking, right?
Yeah.
Because like this Quarry Mountain Star Wars is representing a lot of damage and sustainability. Like gaining life. And you really just want to get them dead. It would be nice if they were at 12.
Yeah.
uh, yeah. Oh, I don't agree with your next turn. So like after they attack you for 8 here, I don't really like using the Stormshriek Feral here to discard. I kind of just because like you have this focus the mind in hand, and also this Stormshriek Feral is a 4/4 flying haste, right? Uh, like the thing I want to do here is I just want to cast your Stormshriek Feral and then cast Channel Dragonfire at their face. Right. Again, like I just want to be very, very aggressive with this Channel Dragonfire.
Okay.
I think you don't need to draw cards with the Stormshriek Feral because like it itself, like if you imagine, so let's say if you played Feral plus Dragonfire this turn, then you trigger Stalwart, you trigger Cutter, so you have a 3/3 at 2/2 prowess and a 4/4 swinging at them, and then you dealt 2 with Dragonfire and another 2 with Stalwart. I think they go down to 3 by my count. I think it'll be 3 to 12 if you do that, and like it's fairly hard for them to deal you an extra or sorry 3 to 10. They need to deal you an extra 4 damage, which certainly isn't trivial. So I think that's pretty reasonable to do.
You said if I was to have dealt all that damage, it would have been difficult for opponent to do what?
So okay, let's say you played Feral plus Dragonfire, right? I believe that if you played Feral and Dragonfire, then swung with everything, you would put them down to 3, and you would be at 10. You wouldn't have any blockers, but you're at 10, and they only have a 6/6 in play. They would need to find like 4 extra damage to kill you, so you're like fairly safe. You could even choose to be safer by not attacking with your 2/2 to have a blocker, in which case they would be at 5, which is still like a pretty threatening life total for when you have this 4/4 flyer in play, right? So basically I'm saying is I really, really, really want to cast the Stormshriek Feral because and then this Channel Dragonfire because it represents a lot of pressure on them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
and like you really want to end this game. I think what you chose to do of like just casting the Omen half of Stormstreak Feral was like it did turn out fine because you did draw into more aggressive spells, but basically I'm saying you could have like done a little bit better of a job of ending the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you end up doing this, which is fine. Uh yeah. So they attack you for 6, and then on your next turn, it's also fairly interesting. Because I'm pretty sure you miss lethal here.
Oh.
Assuming that, like, I think if they didn't have anything, they are dead here. Is that true? Or no, okay, no, you don't. No, that's not actually true. You're a little bit off. Okay, never mind. Certainly, if you had played the dragon, they would be very dead here. But yeah, I think you didn't really want to kill their 7/7 here. I think it spends a little too many resources, basically. Because like the thing is that like you can chumping their 7/7 is the same thing as chumping it's kind of the same thing as chumping a 4/4, and at this point you're basically just chumping, and you have to spend like 3 shots on it, right? Like like 3 different burn spells on it, copied or whatever. And I
Yeah.
would much rather like be pointing this channel dragonfire at your opponent's face, or like and like or like killing one of these 4/4s with like 2 glacial dragon hunts or something like that. It's not a huge deal though.
Too many resources.
Yeah. The rest of this game I think plays out pretty reasonably. You just like, you just managed to barely burn your opponent out because they don't have removal for your stuff and don't really have ways to get through. But yeah. Yeah. Overall, I think the big thing this game was mostly just the what's it called the playing the like playing the Omen half of Feral instead of the actual dragon. Like the actual dragon would have just killed them across 2 turns, whereas like you took a line that was much riskier and almost died. Like they almost killed you before you could kill them.
Okay. Let's go back.
It was like the turn before this one.
All right. Okay, and then That's when I use too many resources. Okay, got it. All right, on to game 3.
Yeah. I think I don't know if three oh I think there was like one interesting spot in game 3. Uh Mostly again you ran into your opponent just like having large creatures you couldn't deal with. I think the main interesting spot here though was uh let me find it and link it. Uh Here. Sorry. Here you go. So I I will say that I'm not sure if like making a different decision at this point would have really changed the game. Like you were fairly far behind throughout the entire game because you just couldn't deal with your opponent's Warden of the Grove. You like tried to do it this previous turn, but then they had the Snakeskin Veil, and there wasn't really a way for you to play around that. But specifically here, your opponent attacks with a 4/3, and you don't trade off your 2/2/1, right? And it happens there, and then I think it happens again the next turn, and you again choose not to trade with your 2/2/1s, and so this turn you didn't trade with your 2/1s, and you also didn't attack the following turn, right? On your turn, the following turn, and then the next turn you get attacked again by the 4/3, and still don't trade. So okay, uh, or no, going forward from here,
So
right?
they attacked.
So at this point, you try to kill the warden.
Uh-huh.
So this is the turn where you try to kill the warden, and they unfortunately have stakes and bail,
Mm-hmm.
right? The and then on their turn, right? So then on their turn, they attack. They draw a card. They kill your 3/3, and then they attack with their 4/3. Right, and at this point, you could choose to trade off your 2/2/1s for their 4/3, but you don't choose to, and then they pass. Right. Then on your turn, you tap down their 5/5. Um, and then you choose not to attack with your 2/1s. So these 2/1s aren't doing anything right? And on their turn, they attack with their 4/3, and then you think about trading, but then don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to your turn, and then finally you attack with these 2/1s, right? So basically, what I'm trying to point out here is that the first time they like, I think that the best thing you could have done here was the first time that they attacked with their 4/3, you should have just traded. Because what happened here was they attacked you for 4, and your 2/1s didn't do anything. And then they attacked you for 4 again, and then your 2/1s attacked and like got through for like 2 days. Or like you got to leverage your elder to make a favorable trade, but that you could have done that anyways. And you got in for like 2 damage, right? But the point is like eventually like they still have this 4/3 on the board, right? And they're still going to keep attacking you for 4 every turn, and like you still don't really have a great answer to it. I guess you have this glacial dragon hunt that can now that can eventually do something, but you need to discard a spell, which isn't the best. So like eventually you're going to need to deal with this 4/3 eventually, and you've just let it attack you for 2 turns in a row while your 2/1s like aren't actually doing it, right? Like if your 2/1s were actually accomplishing something, or if you had a better way to leverage them in the future, then I could see like not trading. But the problem is that here, like you've just let your opponent attack you for 4 twice, and while you're not using your 2/1s, right? Um, and uh, basically you just like took 8 more damage than you needed to, when you could have just traded at the very beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um. Don't think guess I so long as I traded, it would have been fine to give up my board because I would have to deal with it anyways.
Yeah, so like okay, so
Because then I have
I,
like
I think
nothing on my board, right? If I was to have done that.
yeah, but like like the point is that your 2-1s are never going to do better than trading with this 4-3.
Okay.
Like right, like
Yeah.
uh, you're not going to win the game if every turn, like for example, even if you're like attacking with both of your 2-1s every turn, which you're not, right? Because they have other blockers as well. Even if you're attacking with your 2-1s every turn, you're not going to win the game by like trading 4 damage for 4 damage a bunch of times because like they just have like more resources than you do, right? Um, and like you're not gonna like get a more favorable trade than both of your 2-1s for their 4-3 just because your deck doesn't have a great way to trade with this 4-3. Right. I think like overall, I count like I think this 4-3 attacks you like I want to say 4 different times at the very least.
Yeah.
And like 3 of those times you could have traded.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like putting putting all of these times in chat, right? And like if at some point you had just like traded your creatures with this 4-3, right? You could have been at 16 higher life, which would not have changed the game. I don't think, right? Like I don't think you that would have helped you win this game. I think that overall there was just like very little you can do to come back from the fact that you aren't able to remove this Watcher of the Grove and they just have more resources than you. Which is a structural deck issue. But like if the game had been closer in other respects, it would have mattered quite a lot that you could trade that you could have like traded off creatures and not taken a full 16 damage, right? So like this is a case of like figuring out that like your creatures are not actually going to be better than that, right? Like it makes sense to not trade if either you're going to race or you think you have a way to leverage your creatures better, but you didn't attack the next turn, so you clearly weren't going to race, and you just didn't have a way to leverage your creatures better in this deck.
Repeat that one more time. The same way. Don't change anything. What's it again?
Yeah, so it makes sense to not trade if you think that you're either racing or you're going to like have a way to better leverage your creatures in the future, right? Whether that be like putting counters on them or like making removing their creature with a removal spell so that you have creatures left, right? But you have neither of those things in this case. You didn't choose like following the first time where they attacked for 4 and you chose not to trade. You didn't attack them at all, right? So you clearly weren't racing in that spot, and you just don't have better ways of leveraging your creatures, right? Like your deck doesn't really have it, and like your hand didn't have a way to do it either. So those are both reasons that you should just trade.
Okay, cool. Uh, is there? Yeah, I think that was the end of the game here. Die. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like the game mostly ended with your opponent just had way more resources than you, right? Like they they had like an extra 8 on their board for one thing.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff. Okay. Here's the last thing. Do you have any comments on this? On this one?
yeah. So I don't think I have that many comments on this game. Other than more of the same, this game would have been much easier if you had a way to deal with large creatures. You kind of mostly lost to the fact that they played a 5-mana 5/7 dragon that drew them a card every turn,
Oh
and
yeah.
you had no way to deal with it. So I don't know. Like maybe you could have optimized a little more things here and there, but I don't think there was a realistic way for you to win this game with your deck. So I don't know. Sometimes that just happens.
Okay, cool. Um, so I think that's almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
um, uh, I did sort of want to ask, but this
Yeah.
is for like next time. I think I should write down points where like, yeah, it's gonna be hopeless. Um, just based on what like how like my deck is built, etc., etc. But then I also want to like be able to understand how to play to my outs a little bit better, or how to make
Mm.
the most of it, even though I know I'm losing, because it's just good practice to do, you know.
Yeah. So I think, and this might be a little weird of an answer, but I think the best way to play to your outs in a spot like that like last game, right, where your opponent played a 5/7 dragon, is to have those outs in the first place, right? And this is what what I mean by this is like just again going back to and emphasizing the importance of needing things like hard removal, right? Like I think you should have been playing those Riverwalk techniques, right? Those would have given you outs to play to, right? Like if you can never deal with a resolved creature with 4 or more toughness, then like that just minimizes the amount of times where you can ever play to your outs, right? Uh, the other thing you could do in situations like those is like try to like race them and be aggressive. There wasn't an amazing way to do that in that last game, but like you did have at least a Quarry Mountain stalwart. So like trying to make sure that you get a stalwart trigger every turn and trying to stabilize as best you can is one way to do that.
Okay.
Like I think at some point you should have okay, let me put a link here. Uh if you can go to this spot in the game. Like one thing you could have done here would be to play your island dragon so that you can block their roiling dawnbreaker so you're only getting hit for 5 and then try to burn them out somehow. I do not think it would have worked, but you could have tried to like leverage your 4/4 with maybe along with maybe the humbling elder in order to try to like make some blocks. uh it was certainly a long shot, but that's something that you could have done instead of like trying to play Substitute Appraiser, because you just like clearly you were trying to dig for something but there was nothing to dig to really. uh so yeah, that kind of spot, like you can maybe optimize a little bit. But like I do think the most important thing is like making sure those outs exist to play to in the first place, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Question, but I don't know how to ask it.
uh any way for me to help you with how to ask it? I don't know.
I,
What kind of question?
it's again a really abstract thing, and it could. I probably just need to play more and have more experience.
Mhm.
But how do I know what to leverage? You know, like.
So I think one way to, one thing that I often think about in terms of that is like in a game, right? You should when you're in a game of Magic, you can often think about like there will be various parts of the game that you are better at than your opponent, and there will be various parts of the game that your opponent is better at than you, right?
Mhm.
For example, in this game, your opponent is better than you at many things right
Yeah.
now, right? They are better than you at having like flyers in the air, right? They have like more flyers in the air. They're better than you at like they have a higher life total than you. They have uh, they have just like more stats overall. They're getting a lot of value from their Beator. Like it's draws a card every turn. Yeah, it draws a card every turn, right? Uh, so they have a lot of advantages, but like so you can focus on some things that maybe you have some advantage in. You currently have more cards than them. You currently have more mana than them, right? You have this Dragonstorm Globe. Um, like you have this Quarry Mountain Stalwart that can maybe like attack their life total. Like it's possible that they run out of creatures a little bit, and you can like deal direct. Like if you stall the board, you have more of a way of dealing direct damage to them, right? Because of this Quarry Mountain Stalwart. So like you could theoretically imagine a world where you like play out this Island's dragon, and then play a different dragon as well, so that you can like threaten to trade with Vitor and just like stall out the board, maybe chump with some creatures, and then you might slowly be able to drain them out. It's not going to be easy, certainly. It's almost certainly going to be very hard to do. Uh, but that's something that you can leverage, right? Like often when you're in the game of Magic, you want to leverage the things that you are better at than your opponent by like trying to make the game about those things, right? Like if you're better than your opponent at specifically having this Quarry Mountain Stalwart in play, you want to make the game about that by stalling out the board, making sure that they don't have good attacks. Because if they're attacking you, they're going to overwhelm the like drain you're getting from Stalwart. But if they can't attack you profitably, maybe Stalwart's drain can suddenly matter in the game, right? Similarly, like in a spot where you're like far behind in cards, maybe you can try to make the game be about the fact that you are better at aggression than them, right? Not always just like generating a random example, right? But things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, so for example, the Quarry Mountain Stalwart is like the thing I do have going for me. And
Mhm.
by
Yeah,
playing out the 4/4 dragon and maybe the elder, etc., that would make it so that I can keep using it. Is that your point?
yeah. So yeah, between the Sora and actually now I'm also looking at the duelist in hand, right? You have ways to get damage without attacking, so you want to make the game not be about attacking, right? You want to make it so that if neither player is attacking, like your opponent is better at attacking than you are, so you can try to stop them from attacking, right? By playing a big blocker. Maybe your stalwart will be like something that you can leverage to end the game.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That was very helpful. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um,
Um.
yeah, and I guess that's it for the night for me.
Sounds good.
Do you have any
Hopefully
other
this
points
is
for me
helpful.
of that you any other like comments for the night?
Not really, just like re-emphasizing things like, the things that we went over of like knowing what your deck needs, um, and like focusing on like making sure that you get those in the draft, whether it be fixing or removal or other things.
Um, I need to be better at my fixing. I need to identify the weaknesses in the deck and fill those in. And I should probably like pick cards that are more likely to work with my good cards than against them.
Yeah.
Um, because and also the cards that are more likely to be in my deck. Um, and then pack 2.5 and 3, I should probably start thinking a lot more about what my deck needs and how and get those despite because I already have power, right? I should look at my deck at what it has and what's efficient, and instead of like adding more of one thing, I should just try to like even it out with the things that I'm missing.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
Hopefully this was helpful.
I really appreciate it. I think next week I won't be in town. But maybe like on the 2nd, if that's okay. We meet again.
Yeah, we can work something out with regards to scheduling.
Doesn't have to be right now. Just
Yeah. The second should probably work for me. Yeah.
And as always, I'll double check with you closer to the date in case you change your mind.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much. Do you guys have any questions for Jason before I let them go? This is your chance. I'm paying for the coaching session. So you guys can put some questions in right now. Shout out to Jason for mercilessly farming me in Strixhaven with
That
Correct,
was a long time
Voltron.
ago. They should bring back more Strixhaven.
Meet your maker. Okay, it seems like no one really has a question. So thanks again, Jason. I really appreciate
Yeah,
your help
of
tonight.
course.
Very informative.
Yep. I'll head off then. Bye.
Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed every bit of that. Of any player, man, you should get good. Joking. It's not like I'm much better than you. I'm much worse than you, in fact. Okay,